Welcome back, guys. Today we are talking about Bumi Unleashed. This card has a little bit of everything for everyone. The combo players, the jank players, and just the players that love smashing face with lands. So let's get right into it. After you guys claim that free $15 in the whatnot link, additionally you guys can get 10% off all of your Tolarian Library proxies whenever you use code DT4D. My friends over at Baron of the Dice are having a 15% off site-wide sale until the end of October. So now's the time to go pick up those awesome playmats and deck boxes that match. These are high quality and overall just unique. I'm really just in love with the look and feel of these deck boxes. When it comes to these guys, yes, they sponsor me, but I am a customer first. So I had to let you guys know, go get everything while it's 15% off until the end of the month. Now let's read what Bumi does. This is a 5 CMC creature, 3 generic, 1 red, 1 green. He has trample, and whenever he enters, you get to earthbend 4. Then, whenever Bumi deals combat damage to a player, untap all lands you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Only land creatures can attack during that combat phase. Absolutely insane. The first thing I thought about putting in this guy was a Shia, and then I was like, that way all of our creatures can enjoy the extra combat step. And then I realized, oh wait, Bumi would also be one of those creatures, which would give you an additional combat step. And then from there, you get infinite extra combat steps. So Shia is going to be one of those cards that's maybe too good to include for your casual decks, but that also means this has other potentials of maybe being a Staxy CEDH deck. I could see a world where you would play Bumi in CEDH where you use your Blood Moon effects to slow your opponents down. You can use Collector Oof, and then you're very easily to end out the game with a Shia that not only protects your board because it's going to turn all of your creatures into lands, additionally, it's the combo piece. So I'm super excited to see what you guys think about that. Another thing this guy is able to do that I don't think a lot of people are noticing is whenever we're attacking for the first combat, we can also attack with all of our animated lands. And then from there, let's say one's super massive and has a ton of counters on it, we can sacrifice that land as long as we've earthbended on it, and that land is going to re-enter the battlefield and untap itself whenever Bumi deals combat damage. So you can kind of like put in this weird sacrifice land strategy whenever we're talking about our Power Matters effects that care about sacrificing giant creatures, which green has a ton of, greater good being one of the best. So the flexibility here is insane. The power here is kind of crazy, but honestly, I just want to build a deck that smashes face with massive lands. So let's get right into it. The first card I'm super excited to add to this deck is a card that I've just been wanting to find a spot for a very long time, and it finally has it. Liege of the Tangle. This is an 8 CMC creature elemental that has trample, and whenever Liege of the Tangle deals combat damage to a player, you may choose any number of lands you control and put an awakening counter on each of them. Each of those lands is an 8/8 green elemental creature for as long as it has an awakening counter on it, they're still lands. This means the first combat step, we can use Liege of the Tangle to animate all of our lands, and then Bumi's going to give us that additional combat step, and now all of those 8/8 lands are able to attack our opponents and win the game. Another card I want to talk about is Springheart Nantuko. This is a card that says whenever a land enters the battlefield, you can pay 2 and you can create a token copy of the creature that enchanted it. Now, as long as this is enchanting a creature with earthbending, we can basically earthbend every single land that enters the battlefield. We just have to make sure we're paying that 2 mana. Land enters the battlefield. Let's say this is equipped to Bumi. Now we get a Bumi token, we get the ETB, and that's going to allow us to earthbend 4 on that land that just entered the battlefield. Now, Bumi's not the best scenario because it is a legendary, so you do lose the token, but there's plenty of other earthbending effects that aren't legendary that we can utilize with this strategy. Another card that I noticed would be really good is Raga Draga. This is a 4 CMC legendary creature human boar. It says each creature you control with a mana ability gets +2/+2. That's going to be all of our land creatures. It also says whenever a creature you control with a mana ability attacks, untap it. So now all of our lands kind of have pseudo vigilance. And then he says whenever you cast a spell, if at least 7 mana was spent to cast that spell, untap target creature, it gets +7 until end of turn and gains trample. So this is also a pretty good way to buff up your creatures whenever you're casting massive spells, but let's be honest, we just want him for the untap effect and the buff. We're also getting new earthbending cards that were leaked today. We have Toph, Greatest Earthbender. It says whenever she enters the battlefield, you get to earthbend X, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast her, and she's 4 CMC. It also says land creatures you control have double strike, which is pretty cool. We have Avatar Kyoshi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing pronouncing that right, but this is another 8 CMC creature that says during your turn, Avatar Kyoshi has hexproof, and then at the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to earthbend 8 and untap that land. So you're just throwing 8 1/1 counters on the land, and this is where I think including the ability to sacrifice our lands for value could be very beneficial. Now we're hitting someone in the face for a lot of damage, sacrificing that land and drawing 8 cards. I am down for that. The other boomy is also going to be amazing in this deck. It says whenever he enters, you get to earthbend 1, and then whenever boomy attacks, put a 1/1 counter on each land creature you control. So you're going to get consistently more value as long as this guy is on the battlefield. I also just wanted to mention you would definitely want to put extra combat steps in this deck as well, because every extra combat step is going to equate to not only an extra combat step where we get to attack with our lands again, it's also going to allow us to attack with our commander again, and whenever he connects, we're going to get another additional combat step. So again, additional combat steps are going to be amazing here. I'm actually not really sure how the layering works here or how the combat steps stack, so if someone in the comments could kind of straighten that out for me, because what's going to happen is you get a main phase, then you're going to get a combat step that gives you an additional main phase, but boomy is a combat damage trigger doesn't give you an additional main phase, so I don't know if you go main phase into boomy's extra combat step or if that extra main phase just gets wiped and you go directly into the extra combat step. Not really sure on that. Some rules lawyer could let me know in the comments down below and really straighten things out. I'd appreciate it. Another thing to note is we are dealing with 1/1 counters, so anything that doubles up on our counters or additionally cares about modified creatures is going to be pretty useful in this deck as well. Kodama of the West tree is going to allow us to find lands whenever we deal combat damage with modified creatures. So now essentially for every creature land we control that deals combat damage and has counters on it, we're able to search up another land. Cards that trigger at the start of combat are also going to be amazing here. Zapindrel, Hunger Dominus, and even Cabal, Heart of Krosa are 2 very, very good creatures. Zapindrel says, at the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. Now remember, that's going to happen twice, once on our first combat step and another on our second combat step. And then we have Kamal. Kamal says at the beginning of combat, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. Additionally, we can pay 1 generic and 1 green, and until end of turn, target land you control becomes a 1/1 green elemental creature with vigilance, trample, and haste. It's still a land. So he can help animate the lands that haven't already earthbend, if that makes sense. Aside from that, you're definitely going to want to run your cards like Sylvan Awakening and Kamal's Will. These are cards that just allow you to animate your entire board of lands and turning them online, and that way we're able to benefit off of all of those cards that either give our lands double strike, buffer lands up, or again, creatures that are just going to allow us to double the power of all of our lands. There's a lot of different things we can shove in this deck to make it really, really gross. I'll end with this. If you guys wanted to go to the dark side and really just make it a miserable play experience to play against this deck, you could lean into land destruction. There is some mass land destruction in red, and honestly, with enough earth-bended lands, you're going to be massively unaffected by it, because what's going to happen is they're all going to re-enter the battlefield after you destroy the lands anyway. So, you know, destroy everybody's lands, all your lands are going to enter the battlefield again, and that's going to re-trigger all of your landfall triggers. So it kind of ends up being a win-win for you, and your opponents are just going to end up scooping.